Ms. Turner, thanks for meeting with me. I really do appreciate you coming and taking some time to come in. You know, you're my right hand man,
Got
and
it.
I cannot do this job without you.
Got it.
I wanted to just really talk to you about next year in regards to the fact that we're going to have an instructional dean next
Hmm.
year. So some roles and responsibilities are going to shift, but what I don't want is for your role to go back into that very discipline heavy, um, and you get removed from that instructional side because you've been a huge instructional partner with me for these last 2 years because we haven't had a dean. I know you started working with SPED this year. Talk to me about how you felt like that went.
I thought the process for where I started in mid-year worked out really well because it really was a purposeful and really necessary step that we needed
Yeah.
at our campus because our SPED students, based on the data, have not been growing consistently. And then we also saw where whatever they were learning with the SPED inclusion teachers was not transferring over into the classroom.
Right.
So I really wanted to see what practices they were implementing in small group in their classrooms and what was not happening with the gen ed teacher. And so once we started meeting and started talking about some of those things, I think they really did understand the purpose of why they were starting to have PLCs because they, since I've been here, they've never had PLCs. So to me, a lot of the pieces with strategies and just different instructional pieces that the teachers are doing in the classroom, I didn't see where that was happening in the SPED setting. And so we started to talk about what type of strategies they could use, how they could look at the teacher lesson plans and modify those lesson plans to meet the needs of the student. And so I thought that it was really impactful, just kind of getting started, just getting their feet wet. I think because we're going into the school year, starting it off, letting them, data track, see what the needs of the student are, and then going into teacher training and being a bigger support for our gen ed teachers is really going to help us starting the school year off with that. And then also making that PLC time during the school year very sacred so that they know it's coming up every single week will be a lot better this year.
Okay, so what I think I hear you saying is that you felt like y'all had a good start, but it's definitely not like a checkbox. You don't feel like
No,
it's finished.
no,
Okay.
absolutely not.
So is this something you're wanting to continue next year?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've done a lot of thought processing at the end of the year about what went well and what didn't, and I did get a lot of feedback from the SPED teachers as well as the TAs and our gen ed teachers about what they would like to see happen as a bigger source of support from the SPED teachers.
Okay.
And so I feel like we're going to really kind of get the ball really rolling in a lot better direction this year.
What are some areas of growth that you still see regarding the PLC itself?
Really growing that teacher content knowledge. We have one teacher that's reading and the other teacher is math. But you can just tell that there are some pieces missing regarding strategies for like analyzing the question, especially test taking strategies when it comes to the kids that are in upper grade levels. They and sometimes feel the need that they, because they're on fourth grade level, for example, that they have to give them second grade level work just because that's where their reading level is, but that's not truly meeting them where they are. They're giving them fourth grade level material and modifying, and what does modification look like to really help them meet the needs of what they're asked to do in the classroom.
Right. So we talked to Dr. Kleeman regarding the goals. And one thing she was mentioning is that goals right now that are being written are very content specific and very teak specific. And, especially in math, once they taught that teak, they move on. We don't really, we spiral back, but it's really a quick 5 minutes. So we're really going to have to really shift all that and all their goals over to processing standards.
Right.
So talk to me about that on how you plan on rolling that out, because that's going to be a huge mind shift for our SPED teachers.
So really the biggest thing was that vertical alignment, just really going into looking at what those teaks look like specifically for each grade level and unpacking that teak was really the biggest thing. And then looking at the teak and seeing what type of success criteria or what type of processing skills those students need in order to meet that specific standard or that teak area. And so just really kind of getting their knowledge a little bit more fluid in what that teak actually looks like and how they're going to perform it, but then modifying it to meet the needs of the student, like differentiating.
No, because those processing standards are really the way they think through.
How they think.
So I think, though, it's going to be we're going to have to do a lot of guidance helping them write goals around that processing standard instead of just a specific TEK and that content part. I know last year there was a lot of times things were distraction. And you know, you and I talk all the time because you have these beautiful big ideas and then it kind of falls on other people, right? So talk to me how you're going to ensure that SPED next year, this is your thing, your baby from start to end.
So a couple of the things that I thought through about my baby project this year is really, number one, having my calendar and holding my time sacred. So starting off the bat where they know every week, every Tuesday, we're having our SPED PLC, and it's a non-negotiable time where they're not scheduling any ARDs, we're not scheduling any parent meetings, and also communicating that with the leadership team so that they know I'm not available. We're going to make sure that we hold that time sacred because those teachers need that time with me to coach them thoroughly through the process so that they'll have a plan coming out of PLC of what they need to address during the week for each student at every grade level. So really the biggest thing is the calendar and holding that time sacred and then communicating those needs with my leadership team so that they know this is a sacred time and the teachers know this is a sacred time, so they need to be there at that time as well.
Okay, so, you know, we tried that this year, and I will say I'm guilty of it too, because that walkie goes off and, you know, things are crazy. So what are some ideas moving this year that's going to be different from last year?
Really, the biggest thing, like I said, we tried the calendar thing. And one of the things, and I'm just going to be honest, is sometimes turning that walkie off. Because when I'm in there, if I hear it, I get very distracted. And then making sure that we have an agenda. Because there were some PLCs where I had an agenda and there were some where we didn't. And we just went right into what was the plan for that coming week. And so one of the things to hold everybody accountable is to have that agenda ready so that they know these are the action steps, and using like a timekeeper and kind of following through that process so that by the time we leave PLC, we've tackled everything during that PLC that we need to handle so that we have a plan going into the following week.
Why do you feel like sometimes there wasn't a PLC agenda?
Because there were times, and I'll be honest, that I did get distracted and I did not pre-plan a lot of what we were doing. I just knew going in we were going to talk about the TEKS that was coming up for the next week for certain grade levels. And at the end, we started focusing mainly on STAR grade levels. So we only looked at 3rd through 6th and what was coming up in reading. And then we looked at 3rd through 6th, what was coming up in math, versus looking at all the students and figuring out what's coming up and then how do they look at different grade levels. So I didn't really go into that. At that point, we were just focused on STAR. How can we get them through STAR? So it really wasn't an agenda because it was mainly the same thing throughout each week.
So what I hear you saying is that you're creating the agenda. So talk to me, how do you utilize the SPED lead?
So the SPED lead, at the beginning, she started helping me with those SPED agendas, and then it fell off, and then I started taking it. And so I think at this point in the school year, I think we need to go over the exemplar of what the agenda will look like, and then I would put that responsibility on her for her to eventually start leading those PLCs for reading, and then the other teacher as well for math.
That's what I'm hearing is that it fell again on you instead of that collaborative piece. So when we meet again, I think you have a great plan going forward of calendaring out in that management piece. But I want you to think about what is going to be your plan to make sure it stays that collaborative piece and it's not all falling on you. That we're pushing and encouraging and empowering the SPED level lead to really take on some ownership to where, you know, how we talked about our level leads are really going to be the ones who lead that LAFA PLC or they're planning and they're taking on. What is it that we're giving to her to really empower her and help her grow? Because I know she was looking at, you know, trying to become part of that SMU cohort, and I know she didn't make it. So we've got to figure out how we're going to empower her and help her in some growth areas. So let's meet in about a week, but what do you need from me?
Really just maybe that weekly check-in and feedback support for that, and so I can kind of share with you what's happening during PLC that week, like sharing our plan of what we plan to discuss in PLC, and then giving us feedback on what needs to be adjusted, and not just for me, like you said, for the level lead. And then the second thing, I think we have a really good plan of including her in the level leads and making sure that we are giving them those expectations off the bat of what their role is going to look like throughout the year, and giving her that piece because she didn't attend LAFA, she didn't attend DDI, so I couldn't really go that route with them this year. But I think going into this year, I think it'll be really good to include her when we start going over that information with all of our level leaders, department chairs. It'll be really good.
Well, and I think that will really help with, you do have these great big ideas, but you have to have people to help support.
Right.
So being able to distribute some of that, but still being the facilitator of all of it. So it's still your project, but you're facilitating it from the beginning to the end and keeping that collaborative piece. So when do you feel like you'll have some actions with artifacts like that we can go over before we talk about next year and implementing it?
I say give about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because that would give me time to kind of look at our year at a glance, and then also look at where our SPED kids ended off the year at, and that way we can kind of, I guess, plan like a data meeting where they can come up with what their problem of practice is, what type of goals do they want to set for all of our SPED students going into the new school year. I want to build like that campus-wide data, and then also data per grade level, so that they can look at the trends and come up with the problem practice and what things they want to address for the school year.
That's perfect. So when we meet next time, be ready to have a calendar of like, when is going to be that first goal meeting.
Okay.
And then how quick are you going to turn around and start doing PLCs? You think that's doable?
I think it's doable. I think the biggest thing is, like you said, just aggregating, putting all that data together in a way that they understand it, so that we can really get them to have that conversation instead of me giving it to them and fleshing out the data. I really want them to become better at analyzing the data on their own,
and owning that data.
And owning the data, because it is their kids. And so I want all of us to be a part of that. Like you said, get some of it off of me, and empowering them to do a lot more of the work this year is my goal. And so I think that will really help me, give me time to kind of figure out how I want to go about doing it, so that they really can truly own it and run with it.
Perfect. Okay, so when we meet again, you're going to have a calendar with already what time they're going to meet to set goals, the first PLCs, and an idea. When do you think on there you're going to have like when you're going to collaborate with Miss Gray, our SPED lead?
So we have that work day, and then we have a breakout session, and I think that first breakout session is where I want to stop and meet with them.
Okay.
Because all the other teachers will be kind of planning and doing their grade level thing, but I think for us, we need to sit as a SPED team and start there looking at the data to see how can we support the kids through the year. And so that first breakout session, I would like for that to be our first time to meet with the SPED team.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, then I'll see you in 2 weeks. If you think of anything, though, that you need me to do, or just a thought partner, call me and let me know, because I know that's still a huge project. And you're right, our SPED kids are falling behind. We need to help them.
Right.
So I really appreciate you taking on this project, because we do need to move our SPED kids. So I think it's very important, and I know that you dedicated to that time with that particular team is going to be very beneficial, because I know the instructional coaches, myself and the dean, will usually focus more on gen ed, and SPED gets put to aside, especially when we get that crunch time as STAR, because we get told we need a boot camp plan and everything, and then we quickly go to the gen ed side. So I think you just overseeing this is going to be very powerful for our campus, and we're going to see a lot of instructional growth.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited.
I am too.
I'm excited. We're going to do the best we can.
Well, again, I love working with you.
Absolutely. I like working with you too.
Well, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much.